Over the past 8 years, the 4 dogs and their 4 handlers have worked for about 65 different agencies on nearly 200 cases, many of them high-profile murder cases.
Kenya Mounier, Kelsey Barrett, Kelsey Schelling.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. If the cadaver dogs used in the Morphew case could talk, they'd tell you they work for a company called Bloodhound Man Trackers and that they specialize in high-profile missing person and murder cases. They'd also tell you that they help tell the story of what really happened to Kelsey Barrett, Patrick Frazee's murdered fiancée. Incidentally, the distance from Florissant in Colorado, where the Patrick Frazee case played out, to the Morphews of Maysville is almost the same as the crow flies as it is from Maysville to Moffat. Now, before we deal with the cadaver dog alerts in the Morphew case, and yes, there were alerts, I want to deal briefly with the intertextual aspect, the similarities in the canine narrative as it relates to the canines between the two cases. And since we're looking at the same dogs, what did they do in the Patrick Frazee case? Now, for those of you who don't know, I actually wrote a book on the Frazee case called Murder Most Foul. It's quite a disturbing story, what happened in that particular case. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding my coverage of this case useful, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button. And let's get started. Now, I used to blog, and when I did blog, I covered the Patrick Frazee trial and that whole thing in 2019. I'll put a couple of links to that in the description. Of course, the blogging I'm doing now is behind a paywall on Patreon. People told me I was giving away too much free content. In any event, the killer in the Frazee case went to a lot more trouble to completely extinguish, to completely destroy the body of Kelsey Barrett. He actually incinerated her remains so that what was eventually found of her, like the only thing that was left, was a single tooth fragment found in the final scoop of dirt on a burn patch on a road near the Frazee ranch. So, I mean, if you compare SUZANNE Morphew to what was found with Kelsey Barrett, we don't know exactly what the details were, but it actually seems like there were more remains found of SUZANNE Morphew. In the Patrick Frazee case, the burn patch had actually been covered by a fine layer of dirt. Now, what is so extraordinary about the Frazee case was that it was a complete mystery what had happened to Kelsey Barrett's remains. They searched everywhere for her. They searched landfills, literally everywhere. And although cadaver dogs were brought in, their alerts didn't actually seem to make a lot of sense. For example, they didn't alert inside the condo where authorities believed she was murdered. That didn't make any sense. And yet they did alert on a car bumper outside, as well as on a hay bale at a distant property. So why would they not alert where she died, and yet inside her home, and yet they alerted in other strange places? And it made you sort of wonder, have these dogs gotten it wrong for once? And so it did seem as though the dogs were confused, and that is until Crystal Kenny, Patrick Frazee's mistress and accessory, testified, and that in itself was shocking and unexpected, that she cut a deal with the district attorney and decided to testify against her former boyfriend. She said that she'd been summoned to the scene to clean it up, which she duly did, emptying bottles of bleach and bagging all items with blood on it. And what that proved and what that showed, and that what was so interesting about that, was someone who was actually in the crime scene actively and testifying about what she saw and what was there. And so it actually proved and it actually showed that bleach can totally destroy DNA evidence and also the odor associated with it. And so what she did, and this is where it gets really ironic, she bagged all the items with blood in it. She put countless cleaning rags into something like 5 garbage bags. That's how much evidence had to be cleaned up. And she did a great job. The dogs didn't alert inside the house. But what Kenny forgot about was putting the garbage bags full of evidence against the bumper of a vehicle parked outside. And so guess what? That's where the dogs alerted. What hadn't made sense now did. So what did these dogs make of the Morphew home? Now, if we go to the affidavit, there's a short section dealing with the canines. There was a canine search on May 23rd, 2020. So just under 2 weeks after the incident. According to the affidavit, search teams, along with canines and canine handlers, and they were from Bloodhound Man trackers that's asserted in the affidavit. Bloodhound Trackers was the company and they searched the 19507 Puma Path property, the Morphew home. According to the affidavit, during this search, 3 different canines were used. And so what they would do is they would let them go one by one, allow them to run blindly through the property, right? And so individually, each dog is allowed to find whatever it's going to find. And so what happened was the dogs gravitated to the west area of the driveway parking area. In other words, they seemed to find something similar in a way to the Kelsey Bereth case. They didn't really find anything inside the home, but they did find something on the outside in the driveway parking area. Well, what did they find? Well, instead of a bumper, there was a flatbed trailer and a bobcat skid steer that were parked in the driveway. And guess what? Not just one of these canines, not 2 of the 3 canines, but all three separately, individually, provided a trained final response, which is an alert, a cadaver alert. And this is alerting to possible human decomposition or human remains. And where was that? Well, on top of this trailer, in the dirt on the top of this trailer. And it is established in this affidavit that this area on the trailer where there's gravel and dirt, that's where the canines alerted. And then that wasn't the only thing. It wasn't just the trailer. All 3 of these canines then also alerted on the bobcat. And I think it should be stressed that each of them on their own, each of them individually, independently, after alerting on the trailer, then also alerted on the bobcat itself. One of the canines even jumped into the bobcat and tried to lay down on the driver's seat, which was their way of alerting. And so the bobcat located on the Morphew property is identified in the affidavit, and the flatbed trailer and bobcat steer, in terms of the investigation when they were looking at, were parked right next to each other. I think similar to what you see in this image. Well, if only dogs could talk. But here you had 3 dogs identifying cadaver traces, and I think a lot of us didn't know what to make of what is going on. And now what do you think? Do you think those cadaver alerts were accurate, like they were in the Patrick Frazee case? Anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. If you're interested in reading more about the Frazee case, which has a lot of similarities to SUZANNE Morphew and the Morphew case, well, I'll put a few links to the blogs in the description and also to my book, Murder Most Foul. In my next analysis on this particular case, I'm going to be looking at SUZANNE Morphew's Instagram account. What do we learn from her social media? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.